Because I'm talking to the best-selling number one international best-selling author, Carl Ficks, and
Hmm.
that's cause for a little bit of celebration because we know from behind the scenes what it takes to drive that and to make that happen. And I'm pretty excited about it. I'm assuming it's valuable to you too.
Without a doubt, it's very humbling,
Well, I
very
think
humbling.
you're kind of a humble guy, which brings me to your chapter because I think there were 19 of us total who submitted a chapter, and your chapter was one of those chapters that the other authors, who were getting to know you even before they were able to read each other's chapters, right? Like everybody's chapters were kind of like the state secret. You weren't going to be able to see them really until everybody got the book and got a chance to look inside of it. But even before people read your chapter, they had a bead on you, and they had a bead on what kind of person you are and what you were writing about. And I like everybody would talk about how much they love you. And it's really funny because you're this gnarly a trial attorney who is, not known for being hyper lovable. And I think attorneys have a job to do. And I think you started writing about that in your book. You really were leaning on that message in your chapter. So maybe I should catch people up who are listening. Like, what is a core message of your
I
chapter?
think the core message is holding on to anger and resentment is valueless, and that took me a long time to realize that it serves no purpose other than to bring you down. You think it's a good thing that you're angry or you're resentful of somebody or something, but it serves no colorable purpose other than to uh, diminish you. That's the core message.
Like, I think especially now, I always look at when a book is hitting the market, what's going on in society, what's happening. And I think we're living in this era of such righteous indignation, of feeling so strongly in our position and our moral rights and our moral certainties. And without even naming that, you really addressed the futility of that, the like how bad that is for you as a person. Like, do you make that same connection that I do?
100%. One of my favorite podcasters is Rich Roll.
Mm.
Excuse me. And he commented within the last year, I think I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he said, quote, "My outrage tank is empty," end quote. And, I was chatting with somebody about, we grew up in the 70s and muscle cars. And when you bury the speedometer on a muscle car, it hits the red and the engine seizes, it blows up. You can't run in the red. You can't run a vehicle in the red. You can't run yourself in the red. And it seems like, to your point, everybody's running in the red. There's this sense of perpetual outrage. And I have a saying, I've used it for almost my entire career. It's like, hey, I practiced law for 30 plus years. I'm virtually unoffendable. So somebody would say, I hope I don't offend you. And I'd say, I'm virtually unoffendable. Virtually. There is an exception here and there, but I am virtually unoffendable due to the profession that I chose. I knew going in it was going to be bare knuckle brawling, and I was okay with that. That is a choice that I made, and I was not going to let it get to me. I mean, it would occasionally. We're all human. It would occasionally fire me up, but uh, you know, unless, well, interrupt myself. I did a lot of corporate law and other things. I wasn't doing family law. I wasn't doing criminal law. And I like to say there were very few code reds in corporate law. So what's the point of, code red, all hands on deck? We have an emergency. There, it will shake out, and we'll get to it. And it was all about triaging. Let's take the worst thing first and deal with that. and the others will keep. And that's what kept me, I think, sane is I don't like to use that word, but resourceful over the years.
You're a writer, right? Like you're a
Yes.
writer. Yeah, you come at it from the background of law, but you've been writing for a very long time. You're a very adept writer, a very good writer. And I'm curious, how much of this message shows up in your writing? How much of it shows up in your regular writing and also in what you do for a living? How does this crop up?
I think it crops up in just sharing whatever advice or nuggets of wisdom that I may have to give other folks perhaps some guidance or hope. I don't like to think that I'm in the hope business, but a lot of people, when they're in situations, however you want to define that, may feel like they're the only person that this has ever happened to. And a lot of my writing is to say, hey, let me show you, or let me tell you what happened to me. And, this was my way out of it. And perhaps that is a roadmap for you to get yourself out of it. We're not breaking new ground on crises. Crises have come and gone, and there are patterns. And I've dealt with them a certain way. And I would invite others to, I just say, hey, this is the way I've handled it. And it worked for me. And maybe you could check that out and try it out.
Yeah, I want to say something about like I just skimmed right past it when I accused you of being a writer. You immediately owned it. And it a lot of people don't own it. They're like, "Oh yeah, I wrote a chapter. I'm not really a writer." But you own this. You own being a writer. And what's your plan? Right? You've got a couple of chapters in some really fine co-authored books, in particular the Wisdom collection. And you write on a regular basis. Are you going to take this message and run with it, or are you going to focus on something slightly different?
Well, yes, take a step back. I do own it. I so love to write. It just, to me, I've always loved to write. I find it fascinating. The power of words, the power of very few words, the way you can structure them to deliver maximum impact, either good or bad. Um, it's very cathartic to me. So I do love it. And yes, I have contributed to the Wisdom Collection. It was an awesome project. And I have a lot of years of content on social media. I could put an anthology together, but I'd like to do a cover to cover book. And to your point, I've heard you say over the years, just start writing. And that's what I need to do. I just need to put pen to paper and write. And I don't know where that's going to take me. I know you and I have chatted about some themes, including lawyers bringing their full humanity to the practice of law, which is a fascinating topic to me. I can tell you when I started practicing law in 1988, my emotional intelligence was de minimis. That wasn't really a thing in the late 80s. But upon reflection, it's like, oh boy, if I could redo that, I would redo that. I had a fascinating conversation. My 40th reunion from college was 5, 6 weeks ago. And I had a conversation with a classmate, and she said to me, pardon the French, she said, Carl, you were such a hard ass in college. And I said to her, it was my default. I came to college as a 17-year-old. I was a little boy, emotionally a little boy. So that's a default position for little boys, is to try to be a hard ass. And I've evolved over the years. You evolve. You become more emotionally intelligent. But lawyering, there's a lot of machismo. That's an old-fashioned word, I think, but it's I'm going to out tough you, and the correlation between being a tough lawyer and a good lawyer, there's a disconnect. You can be the most obnoxious and loud lawyer and be really bad at lawyering. And I think you serve your clients, and I think you serve the profession and the community at large better if you actually allow your humanity to come through in the practice of law.
Yeah,
So that's a thought.
I love that. And when I'm a hard ass, I recognize it's the best shield that I have. Like it's a great shield. It's a great camouflage for the fluffy insides that I have. Like if you're a hard ass, people, people won't press too hard or they won't come after you because they feel like they can't affect you anyway. So you're not easy game. But, I've learned that some of the most soft-spoken and loving lawyers or business people are some of the most killer because they open themselves up and they're so unafraid that drop your shields and you think they're just like a pal and then suddenly they're like, yeah, here it is, here's the negotiation tactic or here's the agenda, and you get lulled into that. Like I think the hard ass is no longer effective. I think it's less effective than the more personable, open approach. I'm curious if you see, if you would agree with that or not.
Oh, I would. I would. And later in my career, before I pivoted, when I would be on the phone with younger lawyers and they would spout some nonsense, I would actually get a little playful, pardon the term, but I would say to them, let's stop for a minute. Do you actually believe a single word of what you just said to me? And that would catch them completely off guard. But I would call them on it. I'd say, let's stop. I'm going to repeat what you just said to me. And I'm now going to ask you, do you believe a single word of it? Because if no, I'll let you retract it and we'll start over. And that catches people wickedly off guard. They don't know how to handle that. But that also that activates the listening too. They just think they're going to scream and the bravado is going to move the ball. But I'm actually listening to everything they have to say, and then we can deconstruct it. And that was always a fun exercise. And I don't know if I just felt freer in my ability to do that. But I had some fun with that, and it's totally disarming.
Yeah. I think that's the trick is to disarm yourself, but not just engaging with other people, but to just, like you said, to drop the anger, to drop the rage, to drop the moral, you know, like to forgive, to just be a human being and to understand that you make mistakes, people make mistakes. I think when you're just a human being with other people, it allows you to be just a human being with yourself, which is
Agreed.
relief.
And I will tell you, back to your comment about, everybody with the moral indignation and righteousness. It's a sad indictment on our society when if you go to a restaurant with your friend, spouse, partner, and your table's not ready, and then it's finally ready, and the maitre d' or the host or the hostess says, "Thank you for not yelling at me." That's a sad and stinging indictment of where we are. And I purposefully in those encounters, I try to change the dynamic. I will ask that person how their day has been going. And that changes the dynamic in a good way because I'm not paying lip service to these people. I mean, it's people are stressed out. So you take a minute and you say, "Hey, how's your day been going?" You know,
Yeah.
um, when I went the other day to that medical appointment, I was there at 6. I think I was the first one in. So I didn't say, "How's your day been going?" because it had just started. But I wish that person a good day.
Yeah.
So that was the way to deal with that.
Just be human. Just be human, I think.